Hey folks, welcome back. Let's get real for a moment. There's something that absolutely crushes a person's ego, but they'll never admit it. You won't hear them say it out loud, they won't text you about it, and they certainly won't show it on the surface. But deep down, they feel it. You see, when someone chooses to walk away from you, when they think they have the upper hand, they expect one thing, that you'll react. They expect you to chase, to beg, to try to prove something. And if you do, you're feeding their ego. You're confirming their belief that they were the one in control. But what happens when you don't react the way they expect? What happens when you remain calm, detached, and completely unbothered? That's when everything shifts. People don't regret losing someone who's desperate to get them back. They regret losing the person who disappears, levels up, and leaves them wondering if they ever really had them in the first place. That's what truly eats away at their ego. And here's where it gets interesting. They won't admit it. They'll pretend they're fine. They'll act like nothing has changed. But the more indifferent you become, the more powerful you are in their mind. Because when someone expects a reaction and gets silence instead, they start questioning everything. In today's video, we're diving into the psychological triggers that make them feel your absence in a way they never expected. We'll break down why regret is real, why begging makes you weak, and why emotional control is your greatest weapon. If you want to understand what truly shifts the power dynamic in your favor, stay with me until the end. And hey, if you're serious about stepping into your power and mastering the art of detachment, make sure to subscribe. Now, let's get started. Number 1. The truth about regret. Hey folks, let's talk about something that no one ever wants to admit. Regret. It's funny how people can walk away from you with so much certainty. In that moment, they believe they're making the right choice. They think they have better options, that they're moving towards something greater, that leaving you behind was necessary for them. They might even feel relieved, convinced that their decision was the best one. But here's where it gets interesting. Regret doesn't hit immediately. It doesn't show up the next day, or even the next week. It sneaks up on them slowly, in ways they never expected. And the best part? They will never tell you. They will never admit that they are second-guessing their decision. But trust me, they feel it. At first, they distract themselves. They surround themselves with new experiences, new people, new adventures. Anything to convince themselves that their choice was the right one. They fill the silence with noise. They laugh louder, go out more, act as if they've never been happier. But no matter how much they try to bury it, no matter how much they force themselves to believe they've moved on, there will always be a moment when the noise fades. Maybe it's late at night when they're alone with their thoughts. Maybe it's when a familiar song plays, a scent reminds them of you, or they see something that brings back a memory they thought they had erased. And in that moment, the first seed of doubt is planted. A thought creeps in, uninvited. Did I make a mistake? Regret doesn't come crashing down all at once. It builds. It's subtle at first, just a whisper in the back of their mind, something they dismiss. But then, as time passes, it starts to take shape. They begin comparing. They think about the way you treated them, the way you were there for them, the way you made them feel. They start to realize that what they had with you wasn't as replaceable as they once believed. And suddenly, what was once a passing thought becomes a lingering question. What if I was wrong? But here's the thing. Pride won't let them admit it. Their ego will fight it with everything it has. Instead of facing the truth, they'll pretend. They'll act indifferent. They'll convince themselves they're fine. But inside, they're feeling it. That regret starts to gnaw at them, especially when they see you thriving, when they realize you're not chasing them, when they understand that they no longer have access to you. This is where it gets really interesting. Regret is one thing, but regret combined with the realization that they've lost their hold on you, that's what truly destroys their ego. Because when someone walks away, They assume, whether consciously or unconsciously, that you'll still be there, that you'll still be hoping, still waiting, still available if they ever decide to come back. But when they reach for you and find nothing but silence, that's when reality hits them. That's when the regret turns into something deeper, frustration, maybe even anger. Not at you, but at themselves. Because now they're realizing that they didn't just lose you, they lost the version of you that cared. But here's where most people go wrong. The moment they sense that someone is slipping away, they react. They reach out. They seek closure. They try to remind them of what was lost. And in doing so, they kill regret before it even has a chance to fully develop. That's why silence is so powerful. That's why truly walking away, without anger, without bitterness, without any need for validation, is the greatest move you can make. It allows people to feel the full weight of their decisions. It forces them to confront the reality that actions have consequences. And most importantly, it shifts the power dynamic in your favor. So here's the real question. Are you going to let them feel it? Are you going to give them the space to realize what they lost, to sit with their own regret? Or are you going to be the one to make it easy for them? Because if you truly want to shift the dynamic, if you want them to feel the weight of their choices, you don't do it by chasing. You do it by disappearing. You do it by focusing on yourself, by growing, by leveling up in ways they never expected. And when that regret finally hits them in full force, when they start looking for ways to reconnect, when they start trying to test the waters, when they start realizing that they want you back but no longer have access to you, that's when you'll know. That's when you'll understand that the greatest revenge was never proving them wrong. It was proving yourself right. Drop a comment below with, "I choose silence, Mom." And if you're ready to fully step into your power and take control of your own story, make sure to subscribe, because what's coming next, you won't want to miss it. Number 2, why begging makes you weak. Hey folks, let's talk about something that too many people get wrong: begging. Whether it's pleading for another chance, trying to convince someone to stay, or desperately proving your worth, begging never works. And deep down, you already know this. You've seen it happen. You've probably even felt it yourself. The more you chase, the more they pull away. The more you try to make them see your value, the less they respect you. Why? Because begging doesn't just show that you want them, it shows that you need them. And the moment someone senses that you need them more than they need you, the power dynamic shifts completely in their favor. Let's break this down. When someone walks away, they do it believing they have options. They believe that losing you isn't a big deal, that they'll be fine without you. And the moment you beg, you confirm that belief. You're telling them, without even realizing it, "You were right. I'm not enough on my own. I need you to feel whole." And that message? It's the fastest way to destroy any attraction, any respect, any chance of them reconsidering their decision. But let's take it even further. Have you ever noticed how people respond when they feel like they have complete control? When they know they have the upper hand, they stop trying, they stop appreciating, they stop valuing what's in front of them because they assume it will always be there. Begging only reinforces this idea. It makes you predictable. It makes you disposable. It tells them, no matter what you do, no matter how you treat me, I'll always be here, waiting. And the moment someone believes that, they stop seeing you as an equal. You see, attraction isn't just about emotions, it's about psychology. People want what feels valuable. They crave what feels just out of reach. But when you beg, you remove all sense of value. You turn yourself into something that's easily accessible, something they can take for granted. And once that happens, it doesn't matter how much you love them, how much you care, how deeply you're willing to fight for them. You've already lost the battle. But here's the thing. Most people don't beg because they actually believe it will work. They do it because of fear. Fear of being alone. Fear of being forgotten. Fear that if they don't try hard enough, the other person will never come back. But let me ask you something. If someone only stays because you beg them to, do they even truly want to be there? If they only give you attention because you broke yourself down to get it, is that even the kind of connection you deserve? When you beg, you tell the world and yourself that your worth is dependent on someone else's approval, that without their validation, you're not enough. But the truth is, the most powerful move you can make is the one most people are afraid of: walking away with dignity, choosing silence instead of desperation, choosing self-respect over temporary comfort. Because here's what happens when you stop begging. You shift the entire dynamic. When you refuse to beg, when you accept their decision without resistance, something unexpected happens. Instead of feeding their ego, you trigger something else: curiosity. They start wondering why you're not chasing, why you're not reacting the way they expected, why you're not desperately trying to fix things. And that's when the regret starts to set in. Because suddenly, instead of seeing you as someone who needs them, they start seeing you as someone they might have underestimated. Instead of feeling in control, they start feeling uncertain. Instead of assuming they can come back anytime they want, they start questioning whether you'd even let them. And that's the real power shift. Not in words, not in proving yourself, but in showing through your silence, through your confidence, through your complete lack of desperation, that you were never the one who needed to beg in the first place. So here's the real question. Are you going to beg for what should have been freely given? Or are you going to step back, level up, and let them feel the weight of their own choices? If you've ever begged in the past and learned the hard way why it doesn't work, drop a comment below with "never again." And if you're ready to understand how true power is built, not through chasing, but through detachment, make sure to subscribe, because what's coming next, you won't want to miss it. Number 3. Emotional control, the Stoics' first move. Hey folks, let's talk about something that separates those who thrive from those who self-destruct: emotional control. In a moment of rejection, betrayal, or disappointment, the natural reaction is to panic, to react impulsively, to let emotions take over. But let me ask you this: when has an emotional outburst ever changed someone's mind? When has losing control ever made someone respect you more? Exactly, never. Stoicism teaches us that true power is not in the words you say, but in the emotions you choose to master. And the first move of any Stoic, anyone who truly understands power dynamics, is emotional control. Not reacting in a way that gives away your power. Not chasing, not proving, but instead observing, processing, and choosing the response that benefits you the most. You see, emotional control isn't about suppressing your feelings. It's about not letting your feelings dictate your actions. And that's where most people get it wrong. They assume that feeling something means they must act on it. That if they feel anger, they must lash out. That if they feel heartbreak, they must beg for another chance. That if they feel insecure, they must seek validation. But the truth is, powerful people don't react. They respond. Imagine this. Someone walks away from you, expecting a dramatic reaction. They expect you to plead, to panic, to try to convince them that they made a mistake. But instead, you say nothing. You accept it. You move forward without resistance. That silence alone shifts the entire power dynamic, because now they're not in control of your emotions. They don't get the validation they were expecting. They don't get to feel like they have all the power. Instead, they're left wondering, why aren't you reacting? Why aren't you fighting for them? And that's when the doubt begins. Most people fail in this moment because they let temporary emotions lead to permanent mistakes. They lash out. They say things they regret. They break their own dignity just to get a response. But a Stoic understands that emotions are momentary. But the way you handle them defines you forever. So, how do you master emotional control when everything inside you is screaming to react? First, pause. Take a step back. Instead of reacting instantly, allow yourself to sit with the feeling. Ask yourself, is this feeling valid, or is it just my ego? Is this emotion serving me, or is it controlling me? Once you detach from the immediate emotional pull, you can see things clearly. Second, understand that emotion is power, but only when it's controlled. The moment you become reactive, you lose leverage. Think about the most respected leaders, the most admired individuals. Do they react impulsively? Do they beg for approval? No. They move with control. with certainty, with the ability to remain centered, even when everything around them is chaotic. And third, replace emotional reactions with intentional action. Instead of lashing out, focus on leveling up. Instead of trying to convince someone to stay, become someone they regret leaving. Instead of chasing, create an energy so powerful that they feel your presence even in your absence. Because at the end of the day, emotional control isn't about proving anything to anyone else. It's about proving to yourself that you are unshakable, that no matter what happens, no matter who stays or who goes, you will not lose yourself in the process. So here's the real question. Are you controlling your emotions, or are your emotions controlling you? Drop a comment below with "I control my emotions." And if you're ready to fully embrace the mindset that makes people respect, admire, and even chase after you, make sure to subscribe. What's coming next? You won't want to miss it. Number 4. The power of indifference. Hey folks, let's talk about one of the most misunderstood and powerful forces in human relationships. Indifference. If you've ever been in a situation where someone walked away, ignored you, or acted like they didn't care, your first instinct might have been to fight for their attention. You wanted to prove your worth, to show them what they were missing. But here's the hard truth. The more you care, the weaker you appear. The less you care, the more powerful you become. Most people think indifference is about pretending not to care, putting on an act of being distant, or emotionally shutting down. But real indifference isn't about playing games, it's about genuine detachment. It's about reaching a point where someone else's actions no longer have control over your emotions, where their presence or absence doesn't determine your happiness. And here's what most people don't realize. When you genuinely embody this mindset, people feel it. Think about it. When someone knows they can manipulate your emotions just by ignoring you, they lose respect for you, even if they once liked you, even if there was genuine attraction. The moment they sense that their presence or absence dictates your emotions, they start seeing you differently. They may not even do it intentionally, but subconsciously, they pull back. They test boundaries. They start taking you for granted. And before you know it, you're the one chasing while they enjoy the power of being pursued. That's where most people get stuck. They try to fix it. They over-explain. They reach out. They analyze every little thing, hoping that if they just say the right words or do the right thing, the other person will finally see their worth. But the opposite happens. The more you chase, the more unattractive you become. The more you try to prove your value, the less valuable you seem. But when you practice true indifference, everything changes. Because indifference creates uncertainty, and uncertainty is powerful. It makes people wonder. It makes them second guess. It makes them start thinking about you in ways they didn't before. Let me ask you this. Why are we drawn to things that feel just out of reach? Why do we value what we can't easily have? Because human nature craves what is uncertain. When someone knows they have you no matter what, when they know you're always waiting, there's no urgency, no curiosity, no challenge. But the moment you stop caring, stop reacting, stop proving, they feel it. And suddenly, they start thinking about you in ways they never did before. Now, let's be clear. Indifference isn't about being cold or rude. It's not about playing mind games or being toxic. It's about choosing yourself first. It's about having the emotional strength to walk away when you're not valued. It's about creating a life that is so full, so exciting, so fulfilling that whether someone stays or leaves has zero impact on your peace. Because here's the thing. When you embody true indifference, you don't have to say anything for people to feel it. You don't have to act distant or fake being busy. They'll just know. They'll sense the shift in energy. They'll start wondering why you're not reacting the way they expected. And once that happens, the power dynamic shifts completely. And here's the best part. Indifference doesn't just make you more attractive to others, it frees you. Think about how much energy is wasted obsessing over someone's text, wondering if they'll come back, trying to decode their actions. Now, imagine taking all of that energy and redirecting it back to yourself. Imagine how much more confident, more at peace, more powerful you'd feel if you genuinely stopped caring about things that don't serve you. That's the secret. Indifference isn't about punishing them. It's about liberating yourself. It's about choosing to be in control of your emotions instead of letting someone else dictate your happiness. And the moment you truly embrace this, the moment you stop needing their validation, they will feel the shift. Because here's what people don't understand. When you don't chase, you don't beg, you don't react, you don't seek approval, you become a mystery. And nothing is more magnetic than someone who doesn't need anyone but themselves. So ask yourself, are you controlling your emotions, or are your emotions controlling you? Are you choosing to walk away from situations that don't serve you, or are you still trying to prove your worth to people who don't deserve it? If you're ready to reclaim your power, if you're ready to let go of the need for external validation and truly become untouchable, drop a comment below with, "I choose indifference." And if you're serious about stepping into a life where you are the prize, not the pursuer, make sure to subscribe, because what's coming next, you won't want to miss it. Number 5. Rebuild in silence. Hey folks, let's talk about something that's more powerful than any words you could ever say. Silence. When someone walks away from you, disrespects you, or underestimates your value, your first instinct might be to prove them wrong, to show them that you're still worth it, to make them realize what they lost. But here's the truth. The most powerful way to prove anything is to say nothing at all. You see, most people handle rejection or heartbreak the wrong way. They get loud, they announce their pain, they let the world know they've been hurt. They try to make a statement, whether through social media, through indirect messages, or through desperate attempts to prove that they're doing just fine. But the reality? The loudest person in the room is always the weakest. True strength doesn't come from proving. It comes from becoming, and that's where the power of rebuilding in silence comes in. Rebuilding in silence isn't about ignoring your pain. It's not about pretending everything is fine when it's not. It's about understanding that your growth is your greatest revenge, and it doesn't need an audience. The people who doubt you, who leave you, who underestimate you, they don't need an explanation. They don't need updates. They don't need to see your progress unfold in real time. Because here's the truth. They will find out when it's too late. When you rebuild in silence, you shift your focus away from external validation and turn it inward. You stop caring about whether they notice, whether they regret, whether they come back. And in doing so, you create a life that is no longer centered around their presence or absence. Think about it. What happens when someone expects you to stay broken, to stay lost in your emotions, to keep waiting for them, and instead, you disappear, not in bitterness, not in anger, but in complete, focused detachment. They start wondering, they start checking in, they start noticing that something is different, and that uncertainty, that's what makes them regret. Not your words, not your attempts to prove anything, but the undeniable fact that you are no longer the same person they walked away from. Most people waste time trying to prove their worth to those who didn't see it the first time. They spend hours crafting the perfect response, hoping for closure, waiting for that moment when the other person finally realizes what they lost. But here's the reality. You don't need closure when you become the best version of yourself, the version that doesn't look back, the version that doesn't need validation, the version that is so focused on their own evolution that whether someone returns or not no longer matters. When you rebuild in silence, you reclaim your energy. You stop giving your power away to people who don't deserve it. You stop waiting for apologies that may never come. And most importantly, you stop needing an audience to validate your transformation. Because here's the thing, true power isn't in proving anything. It's in being so undeniable that they can't ignore it. It's in letting your growth speak for itself, long after they've assumed you were still the same person they left behind. So let me ask you, are you rebuilding for them, or are you rebuilding for you? Are you moving forward in silence, or are you still hoping they'll notice? If you're ready to step into your power and rebuild without needing an audience, drop a comment below with, "I choose silence." And if you're serious about becoming the kind of person who never has to chase, never has to prove, never has to look back, make sure to subscribe, because what's coming next, you won't want to miss it. Number 6. Why they always come back. Hey folks, let's talk about something that happens more often than you think. They always come back. You've probably seen it before. Someone leaves, thinking they're making the right decision, convinced that they can find something better. They act indifferent, maybe even arrogant about walking away. But then, weeks, months, maybe even years later, they come back. They send that text. They check in. They find some excuse to reach out. And you sit there wondering, why now? Why do they always come back? Here's the truth. People don't always realize what they have until it's gone. When they leave, they don't immediately feel the loss. At first, they feel free. They feel like they have options. They believe they're moving forward, that they made the right choice. But over time, something shifts. They start noticing that what they thought was out there isn't as great as they imagined. You see, people walk away because they assume the grass is greener somewhere else. They think they can upgrade, that there's something better waiting for them. But what they don't realize is the grass isn't greener, it's just different. And in that difference, they start noticing the gaps. At first, they distract themselves. They go out, meet new people, fill their time with anything that keeps them from thinking about you. But here's where it gets interesting. Eventually, distractions fade. The excitement of something new wears off. And when they start comparing, when they start remembering, that's when regret creeps in. They remember the way you made them feel, the way you supported them, the way you brought stability into their life. And suddenly, all the things they took for granted start to feel like a loss. That's when they start wondering if they made a mistake. That's when they reach out, testing the waters, hoping to see if the door is still open. But here's what you need to understand. Just because they come back doesn't mean they deserve to. Some people return because they genuinely realize your value. But most come back out of comfort, not commitment. They come back because their other options didn't work out, because they're lonely, because they want validation, not because they're ready to treat you better. And this is where most people get it wrong. They mistake familiarity for love. They think, if they're coming back, that must mean they care. But care isn't shown in their return. It's shown in their actions after they return. Are they coming back as a better version of themselves? Or are they just looking for the comfort they once had? When someone comes back, you need to ask yourself, what has changed? Not with them, but with you. Are you still the same person who would tolerate their excuses, their lack of effort, their inconsistency? Or have you grown? Have you rebuilt? Have you stepped into your power so completely that their return no longer affects your peace? Because here's the real power move. You don't let their return define your worth. You define whether they still have access to you. When they reach out, the real question isn't, why did they come back? It's, do I still want what they have to offer? And if the answer is no, you move forward without hesitation. You don't need closure. You don't need explanations. You don't need to hear why they left or what they were thinking. Because at the end of the day, if they didn't see your worth when they had you, why should they be rewarded with a second chance? So here's my challenge to you. The next time someone comes back, don't react emotionally. Observe. See if they've changed. See if they are truly different. And if they aren't, let them feel what it's like to lose you for good. If you've ever had someone leave and come back only to realize they were the same, drop a comment below with, I've outgrown them. And if you're ready to truly step into your power, where you no longer wait for someone to return, but instead create a life so fulfilling that they regret ever leaving, make sure to subscribe, because what's coming next, you won't want to miss it. Number 7. The test, when they reach out. Hey folks, let's talk about that moment we all think about. The moment they finally reach out. You've done the work. You've focused on yourself. And then out of nowhere, that message pops up. Maybe it's casual. Maybe it's deep. Maybe it's just an emoji. But no matter how it comes, it always sparks the same question in your mind. Why now? This is where most people make mistakes. That instant rush of emotions, curiosity, excitement, even relief can cloud your judgment. You start thinking, maybe they finally realize what they lost. Maybe they've changed. Maybe this is the moment where everything turns around. But before you let your emotions take control, you need to step back and recognize one thing. This is a test. Not for them, but for you. This is the moment where you prove whether you've actually grown or whether you're going to slip back into old patterns. The truth is, most people don't reach out because they've had some life-changing realization. They reach out because something is missing in their life. Maybe they're feeling lonely. Maybe they're nostalgic. Maybe they're curious about what you're up to. And sometimes they just want to know if they still have access to you. People like to keep doors open, even when they have no intention of walking through them. They want to feel like they still have a piece of you, like you're still available if they ever decide to come back. So, what do you do when this happens? First, don't react immediately. Give yourself time to process. Just because they reached out doesn't mean you have to respond. And if you do respond, it should come from a place of calm, not a place of emotional urgency. Ask yourself, what do they really want? Have they shown any signs of actual change? Are they adding value to your life by coming back? Or are they just disrupting your peace? This is where you take back your power. You're no longer the person waiting for their attention, hoping for validation. You've rebuilt, you've grown, and you're no longer dependent on their presence. When you engage with them from this mindset, everything shifts. They no longer see you as someone who is waiting. Instead, they feel something they weren't expecting. Distance. Not physical distance, but emotional distance. The realization that they are no longer in control of how you feel. That's the moment where they start questioning their choices. When you don't jump at the chance to reconnect, when you're not overly excited or emotional, they start wondering, did I really lose them? Is it too late? That uncertainty is powerful, not because you're trying to play games, but because it shows them something undeniable. You've moved on. And nothing makes someone reflect on their own actions more than realizing the person they took for granted no longer needs them. But let's be clear, just because someone comes back doesn't mean they deserve another chance. It's easy to assume that their return means something significant, that it's proof they care. But caring isn't about returning when it's convenient. It's about consistency, respect, and effort. If their return doesn't come with growth, if they aren't showing a real shift in who they are, then their presence is just a distraction. So ask yourself, are they a part of your future? Or are they just a lesson from your past? Are they coming back because they truly see your value? Or are they just looking for comfort? You are the one in control here. They may have reached out, but the decision of whether they still have access to you is yours. If you've ever been in this situation, drop a comment below with, I control access to me. And if you're ready to fully step into your power and never let anyone test your worth again, make sure to subscribe, because what's coming next, you won't want to miss it. Number 8, becoming truly unshakable. Hey folks, let's talk about what it really means to be unshakable. Not just someone who pretends to be strong, not someone who acts indifferent, but a person who is truly untouchable at their core. When life throws challenges your way, when people disappoint you, when someone walks away or tries to shake your confidence, do you crumble or do you remain steady? That's the real test. Becoming truly unshakable isn't about suppressing emotions or pretending not to care. It's about developing a mindset so solid that no external event can break you. It's about reaching a point where you no longer react impulsively, where people's opinions, actions, or presence don't dictate your emotional state. Because here's the thing, most people are controlled by external validation. They feel good when someone praises them, and they feel terrible when someone rejects them. Their self-worth fluctuates based on how others treat them. But when you become unshakable, none of that matters anymore. The first step to reaching this level of strength is emotional mastery. Most people believe emotions happen to them. They think they can't control how they feel, that their reactions are automatic. But that's a lie. You always have a choice in how you respond. The problem is, most people don't practice control. They let emotions dictate their actions instead of the other way around. They react instead of responding. They get offended easily. They need closure. They need explanations. They need validation. But an unshakable person, they don't need anything from anyone. They understand that emotions are temporary, but their ability to control those emotions is what determines their power. The second step is detachment. Most people suffer because they hold on too tightly to people, to expectations, to outcomes. They want control over things they can't control. They want people to act a certain way. They want situations to unfold in their favor. They want certainty. But life doesn't work like that. The more you try to grip something, the more it slips through your fingers. The truly unshakable understand that attachment leads to suffering. When you detach, not in a cold way, but in a stoic way, you free yourself. You allow things to happen without feeling like they define you. If someone leaves, let them. If something doesn't work out, move forward. You are not defined by external factors. Another crucial part of becoming unshakable is self-reliance. The more independent you are, the less people can manipulate you. The more solid your foundation, the less anyone can knock you off balance. You have to create a life where your happiness, your success, and your fulfillment are completely in your hands. Because when you depend on others for any of these things, you give them power over you. But when you build a life so full, so rich, so rewarding on your own, you don't fear losing anyone, because no one is your source of happiness except you. Now, let's be clear. Being unshakable doesn't mean being emotionless. It doesn't mean you never care or never feel. It means you don't let those feelings control you. You feel everything, but you choose how to respond. You experience loss, but you don't crumble. You face setbacks, but you keep moving forward. You don't allow external forces to determine your worth or your path. The world respects people who cannot be easily moved. When you are reactive, people can play with your emotions. They can push buttons, make you doubt yourself, make you feel small. But when you remain centered, when you do not react the way they expect, they lose all power over you. So let me ask you, who is in control of your emotions? Is it you? Or are you still letting outside forces dictate your state of mind? Because the moment you decide that you are the only one in control, that's the moment you become untouchable. If you're ready to step into this version of yourself, drop a comment below with "I am unshakable." And if you're committed to mastering this mindset, to never being controlled by external forces again, make sure to subscribe, because what's coming next, you won't want to miss it. Number 9, the final lesson, they feel it, but won't admit it. Hey folks, let's talk about something that happens every single time, even if they'll never admit it. When someone walks away, when they act like they don't care, when they try to convince themselves that leaving you was the right decision, trust me, they feel it. They might not say it out loud. They might never send that text or apologize. But deep down, they know, and that's all that matters. See, here's the thing about people. They don't like admitting when they've made a mistake. They don't like facing the reality that maybe, just maybe, they were wrong about you. It's an ego thing. When they leave, they tell themselves a story to justify it. They create reasons in their mind, like, it wasn't meant to be, or I need something different, or even worse, they'll never change. But as time goes on, as they experience life without you, that story starts to crack. At first, they don't notice it. They feel fine. They move forward, thinking they made the right call. But then, reality kicks in. They start comparing. They start remembering. They start realizing that what they thought they'd find somewhere else, it's not the same. The comfort, the connection, the presence you brought into their life, it wasn't just something they could replace overnight. And that's when it hits them. But here's where it gets interesting. They won't admit it. Why? Because admitting it means admitting weakness. It means admitting they misjudged the situation. And for a lot of people, their pride won't let them do that. Instead, they stay silent. They lurk. They watch from a distance. Maybe they scroll through your social media. Maybe they ask mutual friends about you. Maybe they find small excuses to check in. But they won't say it outright. They'll feel it, but they won't admit it. You might be thinking, if they feel it, why don't they just come back? And that's a great question. The truth is, some do, but many don't. Because coming back requires them to confront the very thing they're trying to avoid, the reality that they were wrong. Think about it. If someone walked away from you, convincing themselves that they didn't need you, that you weren't valuable enough, that they could easily move on. How does it look when they try to return? It shatters the image they built in their mind, and most people would rather suffer in silence than admit that they miscalculated. But here's where you win. You don't need them to admit it. You don't need that apology, that confession, that moment where they finally say, "I was wrong about you." Tut. Because the real victory isn't in their words, it's in your actions. It's in the fact that you didn't wait. You didn't pause your life for them. You didn't spend your time hoping they'd come back. Instead, you grew, you evolved. You became someone they can't ignore, even if they try. And here's the best part. When they see that you've moved on, when they see that their absence didn't break you, that's when they feel it the most. It's one thing to miss someone. It's another thing entirely to realize that person no longer needs you. That's the true regret. Not just missing what they had, but realizing that even if they wanted it back, they might not get another chance. So, if you're wondering whether they ever think about you, if they ever feel the weight of their decision, let me save you the trouble. They do. But by the time they realize it, you'll be too far ahead to care. If you've ever been in a situation where someone left and later tried to reconnect, drop a comment below with, "They feel it. But I've moved on." All right, folks, that's it for today. If there's one thing to take away, it's this. You don't need their validation, their apology, or their admission. The real power is in moving forward so completely that their regrets no longer matter to you. If this message resonated with you, let me know in the comments. And if you're ready to fully step into your power, make sure to subscribe. More Stoic wisdom is coming your way, and trust me, you won't want to miss it. Until next time, stay strong, stay grounded, and keep moving forward. See you in the next one.